All right. We are live again on MITech TV. I have my usual partner in crime, Matt Roush, with me. And we also have with us Kwafo Adarkwa, who is the Director of Public Affairs with ITC Transmission. And as most of you may know, we started in January doing a energy report sponsored by ITC. And that's what we're going to be continuing on today with our April segment. So in this particular one, we're going to be talking about the trend of electrification and what needs to be done to prepare for future where more items are running on electricity, including those darn EVs, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, I don't know if you saw, but Mark Roush announced today an electric Corvette. Interesting, huh?
Nice.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. The Tesla killer, right?
Well, all right. I was going to say it joins the Mustang Mach-E, right? As semi-muscle cars that are electrified.
Yeah. Anyway, so Kwafo is going to be talking about lots of things, but let's start off with talking about what ITC is. Obviously, we know what it is, you know what it is, but we always assume folks in the audience may not know what it is. So take it away.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mike and Matt, and thank you for that introduction. ITC is really, I would say, the meat of the sandwich in terms of electric transmission and deliverability to our state's residents. You have a three-part electric system. You have power plants, you have transmission, and you have distribution. Our company is the nation's largest independent electric transmission provider. We own, operate, and maintain those assets throughout our state and other places in the country, bringing that reliable power to homes and businesses across the states in which we operate.
All right. Well, thanks for that foundation. Just so people know, can you tell us, first of all, and then I have a follow-up question, what states ITC operates in?
Yeah, operating in Michigan, in parts of Wisconsin, the Great Plains, Kansas, and Oklahoma, Iowa, another big part of our footprint. So multi-state, multi-endeavor with a single focus just on transmission and providing that value to customers at the end of the day. So we operate in 7 states across most part of the Midwest. We have elements in a little bit of Minnesota as well. So very, key to the deliverability of energy in the great part of the Midwest and the United States here.
And one thing we should probably, I'm sorry, Matt, you said you had a follow-up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, today's topic is about electrification, but can you tell us what electrification really means?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because you guys talked about the EVs and the Mach-E's, and I see some in my neighborhood, and I'm like, maybe I want one of those as well. But it goes beyond EVs when we talk about electrification. It's so a great many things. It's changing the processes that were either internal combustion in the way of the automobile, but changing our processes maybe for home heating, for industrial processes, and making those more electrified. And so to do that, you're going to need electric infrastructure, and you're going to need the backbone in which a company like ITC provides, being that highway, if you will, a highway system of power. That's the best way to describe what we do, our role, and what we're going to have to do going forward for electrification. It's not just simple as vehicles. That's a big part of it. That's some of the low-hanging fruit, but it goes beyond the pale in terms of what you have to do in homes and changing those and converting those over, businesses, some other processes. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, and it's happening as we speak right now, that change and that move towards electrification.
Let me also add, just so people are not confused, what you guys don't do is actually generate the power. That's the DTEs and the consumers of the world and all these other states, whatever they might have. But when they see those big power lines and the big towers, that's you guys, right?
That is us. Whenever I'm at a cocktail party and I try to explain what I do, I usually point to I-96 or 94 or 127 in Michigan and say, if you look at those lines that go across that swath of land, that is what is a domain of ITC Holdings. So yeah, we do not generate power. We do not distribute it into your home businesses. We are the conduit, the highway, if you will, of electric delivery.
All right. And so with that highway, what does the future look like for this transition we're now talking about? And do we have any ideas when these fundamental shifts will occur?
Yeah, let me answer in reverse order. The fundamental shift is here. It's happening now. We're talking about electric vehicles. That's a big part of it when you think about what it's going to take if everyone in say a state like Michigan were to move to EVs. We don't have the infrastructure in place to do that right now. So we're going to need more infrastructure. We're going to have more planning of transmission infrastructure to facilitate that change. We have a generation fleet that is getting older in our state. And in a lot of states in which we operate, we're going to need to diversify that, and it's already being diversified, moving away from coal, moving away from oil, having more solar, more distributed resources and energy sources in that regard. And so transmission is the key to kind of unlocking that. It connects the generation sources, wherever they may be, into the load centers, wherever they may be and where the usage could be. So you have a transformation underway. It's actually an exciting time to be in the industry when you have this much in flux. And I think what you're going to see is transmission is going to be very, very key component to how we move forward and how we go about our business. And it's a very exciting time to be involved in the space because of that transition, moving away from fossil fuels in a great part. And again, having those resources that are so maybe, where you put solar is not typically next to cities and businesses and towns. And so getting that power there efficiently and effectively is going to be key. And how we plan for that is going to be also key moving forward over the next several years.
Just let me leap in real quick, man. I was one thing I wanted to ask about, and I looked at my notes, and there's a reference to John Oliver talking about this. Or was that what you're going to ask, Matt?
Well, yeah, I was just curious. How can people get hold of that segment? Because I did take a look at it, and it does do a really good job of explaining. You don't generally think of a political satirist as being a source of this kind of information, but he really did a great job of explaining what we're asking the grid to start doing in the near future, and it's kind of really not set up for that yet.
Yeah, no, it's a great piece, and we can get a link, so maybe it's in the show notes for people that are watching this. You can YouTube it as well. John Oliver, no matter where you come down on him, I think you really put it in layman's terms. What we're asking this grid to do was designed in some parts of the country, 100 years ago, and we're asking it to take on demands it's never seen. And so he really breaks it down in a way that is compelling. And I think for the average person to kind of understand it, you're asking it to power your cars, to power your businesses, to power your life-saving machines, and to use it in a way that sometimes isn't as efficient as it needs to be. And so we're asking a lot of it. And so Oliver's piece is really well done. I really satirist, but it shows you where we are in the sense of what this grid needs to do, where it's come, and where it needs to go going forward.
I was just curious too. This is still sort of the part of the last question. Is do we know when these changes will be occurring? I mean, it's sort of a chicken and egg thing. You'll have more electric cars when there's more easily available fast electric car charging, right? Yeah. But how much time do we have to get these things in place?
I would say not a lot, Matt and Mike. Really, when you look at DC fast charging and to get us to a place where EVs and the people consider them in the same way they do internal combustion engines, to get that infrastructure, we should have really been starting that work before. And again, removing some of the impediments that are out there from a planning perspective and some of the regulatory frameworks that need to be more robust and to consider future states. So we're kind of right up against it, especially if you see that adoption curve that's going to take off for electric vehicles. The time is now to start planning, to work together. That's policymakers, that's lawmakers, that's John Q. Public, getting more understanding, watching things like this broadcast today to get a better understanding of what our grid needs to do. When you see a business like ITC in your town, to understand what it's doing and what it's working on and how it's going to get us into that new electrified world, which we rely on. And we all know we rely on this sort of uninterrupted power, and that where we're at, that space is right now. We're on the precipice of that right now.
We had Simon Whitelock on in the last segment in March, and we talked about how the planning cycle is actually 7 or 8 or 9 years out. Mm-hmm. And you just made reference to the fact we probably should have started sooner, but none of us really have a crystal ball and could see this EV future coming as fast as it is, not to mention everybody has some electrical device in their home, be it a computer or a smartphone or you name it. It's just a gazillion of them. And it's really taxing the grid, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're asking the grid to do, again, as I go back to things that we never thought a generation ago that it would do. And yeah, getting that planning, yeah, you would say, we've got to think forward 8 or 9 years, and we didn't think the adoption rate would be this well. But that's, that's kind of what I think ITC prides itself on, is being able to see sort of that crystal ball and trying to plan for the future, trying to push for policies. In my role, as Director of Public Affairs, I've got to build trust with policymakers. I've got to get folks to understand that future vision. And so, yeah, I would concur that right now, sitting in 2022, the time is now to start thinking about what 2030 looks like, and being carbon free by 2030 or 2050, or these markers that are out there. We need to start doing now, planning the grid now, being reflexive now to these needs that are coming forward. So it's very much akin to the great hockey players looking at and understanding and anticipating where that puck is going to go before it actually gets there.
So what kind of challenges do we face getting there? What are some of the roadblocks that you folks see?
Yeah, I think folks understanding the realities of when you just flip the light switch on in your home, not understanding, as we started the show, the generation, transmission, distribution, understanding all those phases that bring that power to your home. I think understanding it from a policy perspective, having policy that takes a larger geographic region in mind, looks at the future needs and uses of the system, plans for transmission, removes barriers to the development of that transmission, be it from siting and those sorts of things that sometimes cause that 7, 8, 9 year delay for transmission to go forward. So thinking about that future state, thinking about how we can be better in terms of planning, policy perspectives, and all those sorts of things that are in the impediments to growing the business. And then also just to educate. I would have people educate themselves on the energy transformation we're undertaking, and to be armed with that knowledge about what's happening and what we believe to be happening in the not too distant future.
If I know one of the big bugaboos, and this isn't your area, but I want to throw it out anyway, is home efficiency or business efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of energy is really wasted because of improper insulation and improper windows or doors. I know that's, again, not part of what the ITC mandate is, but would that help solve some of the taxing of the grid, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think energy efficiency is always a big component of that energy future, right? And I think a lot of folks here in Michigan and other parts of the country are looking at those measures and have for the last decade and a half. It's all going to matter, right? Any electron you save also has a benefit, and it's energy that doesn't have to be developed and put on the grid. But I think efficiency coupled with future planning all are going to be big factors as we think about the future grid, because even if you're saving electrons, you're probably a net positive user. If you have more efficient windows, home heating and whatnot, you're still going to be you're going to use more electricity than you probably even realize, even in that, more efficient state. But if, appliances are getting more efficient, your phones, these cars we're talking about are getting more efficient, but you're still using a lot of power to make that all happen.
Yeah, my favorite story in that regard is there's a light over my kitchen sink, and it was originally, you could tell where there was a spot for a can fixture in there that was probably a 75 or 100 watt incandescent bulb.
Right.
And then I swapped that out for an 18 watt fluorescent fixture. Yeah. And then most recently, when that died, I swapped it out for a 4.7 watt LED fixture. Right. So 100 watts to 18 watts to 4.7. I mean, we're moving in the right direction as far as lighting goes, but there's obviously a lot of other things to be done yet.
So many more low hanging fruit in our homes, our businesses, and whatnot. So there's a lot of ways to go. But I want to underscore the need, necessity for the service that ITC provides, with that transmission being the backbone of all of that, right? Without us, none of that other stuff happens in the system.
All right, Kwafo. So we got them all lathered up. They want to know more about ITC. Where can they go to find that out?
Yeah, ITCholdings.com, Modernize the Grid, all of those great places are ways you can find out about us. Our social media link, ITC Grid, all of those things are ways you can find more about our business, what we're doing, and the value we're providing for the customers in the great state of Michigan and other places throughout this great country.